What's next with health insurance reform? This is not healthcare reform. This has been health insurance reform. What do you see as the next step, or is this it?
Well, I can tell you we're working very hard to try to get H.R. 4789 passed and make sure that there is a public option, and I think it's going to happen. Two members of leadership, as cautious as they are, both told me that they thought that would be law within 3 years, and I said, why not within 3 months? So I'm going to keep pushing. I think another thing that's pretty prevalent and the thing on the subject is that we have to do something to actually enforce the rules that we're establishing that the insurance companies are going to have to abide by. And I'm concerned about that. Michael Moore pointed out yesterday morning on Democracy Now! That it's all very nice to say that they can't discriminate against you for pre-existing conditions, but a $100 a day fine doesn't mean very much to them if you're talking about a $100,000 surgery in order to correct a life-threatening condition. So we've got to be much better at making sure that people actually get the things that we've enacted.
Yeah, for sure. And if there's one thing that gets a person's attention, and now the Supreme Court has ruled that corporations pretty much have the same rights as a person, it is a quick slap across the head with a metaphorical 2x4 in the form of a fine. $100 doesn't cut it. You're absolutely right.
I was actually in the courtroom when they decided that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was me and Mitch McConnell. We were the only elected officials in the courtroom. I've been monitoring it for months, and we actually introduced 4 bills, our Save Democracy bills, to try to sort of get the jump on the Supreme Court on this issue.
Right.
And then we introduced 4 more bills afterward, and I've been pushing the leadership very hard to make sure that we do something about that situation. Our website, savedemocracy.net, has 100,000 people who have petitioned to fight back against the Supreme Court decision, and we're only going to get one shot at it. If we let corporations buy the November election and put in all their friends and get rid of all their enemies, we're not going to be able to reverse that anytime soon.
That's very true. I wanted to ask you one more thing, and oh God, it's gotten completely away from me about health care. Oops, there it flew by. Jesus, it's rough getting old. Oh well, it may come back. The next target I'm understanding of the Obama administration is the financial services sector, the economy, the people who have set Americans up to lose and to fail. And this has been going on. I think this is the third or fourth. What happened here last year is the third or fourth time in the past 15 or 20 years. We had the SNL debacle. We've just watched people get wiped out over and over and over again.
Well, this is way deeper than anything that's happened before. I mean, I guess I don't know if anybody else reads them, but we get regular statistics on the Financial Services Committee from the Federal Reserve about the state of the economy. And I used to be an economist. I'm actually the only member of Congress who actually was an economist at any time in his career. Before I went to law school, I worked for several years as an economist. So to me, it's actually interesting. And we've never had anything like this happen since the Great Depression. Roughly a quarter of the country now has a negative net worth. They owe more than they own. And these are people, in many cases, who are still working. They're generating income, but they are literally drowning in debt. They owe more on their house than the value of the house, and if you put all their liquid assets together, it's less than what they owe on their mortgages and on their credit cards.
Right.
That's never happened since before. Even in the 30s, people had a lot of trouble borrowing, and those who borrowed were wiped out very quickly. But now we've got basically the financial walking dead in this country, the people who are really, really in trouble on debt and living from one credit card payment to the next and one rent payment to the next.
Do you see any chance that it wouldn't be called Glass-Steagall now, but it was 70 years ago that act?
No, I think now it would be called the Grayson-Frank Act.
The Grayson-Frank Act put into play that would separate these so-called investment banks. I don't know what the hell they're investing in from just your plain old bank that handles loans and deposits and conducts itself like a business rather than as a casino. Do you see that happening?
Possibly. It's a little hard to say at this point, but I don't think we've really come to grips with one of the fundamental problems of that whole experience, which is that we've created this Frankenstein monster called the bank that's too big to fail.
Yeah.
And I think as long as we have that in existence, we have the the possibility of endless taxpayer bailouts for worthless financial institutions that are themselves financial zombies with negative net assets on their own balance sheet. And I think if you're too big to fail, you're really too big to exist. So Glass-Steagall was useful in one respect, which was to prevent institutions from getting large enough so that they supposedly put the entire financial system at risk, and that's used as some kind of rationale for taking public resources and stuffing it in private pockets. The other thing that Glass-Steagall was good at was preventing non-deposit institutions from borrowing from the Federal Reserve. Right. The Federal Reserve, of course, with the power to create money, has to be rather selective in who they give the money to. Otherwise, you have another source of endless bailouts that leads to depreciation of the currency. So under Glass-Steagall, only real banks could actually borrow from the Federal Reserve. Now we've reached the point where Goldman Sachs, which as far as I know has very few bank branches, I'm being kidding, they have zero.
Right.
Goldman Sachs is now allowed to borrow from the Federal Reserve. They can just call themselves, I mean, McDonald's can call itself a bank at this point and probably get away with borrowing from the Federal Reserve. So we've completely destroyed this fundamental distinction that we made between banks and casinos. And it can only lead to more tears.
What is in your opinion, I feel like I'm talking to Paul Krugman here, what, in your opinion, would be a short-term fix? There's so many people in this country, as you just pointed out, as we all know, that are really treading water, or to use the phrase underwater. I remember it was Paulson or Geithner, whoever used that term, too big to fail. And I think, no, it was before Geithner. It was during the Bush years, the end of the Bush administration. Something too big to fail. That went through me like a knife, because they never say that about working class Americans or people who have watched their jobs go overseas. People are struggling to make a living, working class, middle class, whatever you want to call them. None of us are ever too big to fail.
Well, a lot of people ask the same question in their own minds over and over again. Where's my bailout?
Yeah, really.
And I think that's a good question. Why is it that we have enormous, staggering resources to bail out failed institutions on Wall Street? I mean, the primary bailout bill amounted to almost $3,000 for every man, woman, and child in the country. And yet we have nothing to help people who have lost their jobs or becoming homeless, living in their cars, moving in with their parents. Have no health insurance. It's the impoverishment of an entire middle class. The middle class is being destroyed.
And this intersection of fear and loathing that right-wing media promotes in this country, the Becks and Limbaughs and so on and so forth, that intersection of fear and loathing, loss of assets, whatever assets Americans had, and most of us did not have assets per se the way they're looked at in some countries, or in this country years ago. Our assets were equity, in our houses. All of a sudden that disappeared. But with the jobs gone, assets gone, fear and loathing being pumped into, just mainlined into the bloodstream of this society. At what point, for God's sake, who is going to make what decision to pull everybody back from the brink? I get real concerned about this, Alan. I mean, this is my home, this is my country. I get very concerned about this avalanche that seems to be coming down on us.
Well, me too. I mean, why do you think I leave a wife and 5 young kids every week?
Yeah.
To go to Washington, D.C. and join the maelstrom.
You see light at the, oh God, I hate this metaphor. You see light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, it's an oncoming train. Who said that back in the 60s or 70s? It's a freight train.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's very hard for me to judge at this point if things are going to get better or things are going to get worse, and that's part of what makes me show up for work each week. The sense of uncertainty and the sense of having everything in the balance, every conceivable thing. The future of my children, my grandchildren, their children,
right,
for generations to come. I mean,
exactly.
There's nothing that guarantees a good life for all Americans unless Americans make it happen. I've always believed that. Everybody's better off when everybody's better off.
Yeah.
I really believe that.
Yeah, and there was a time in this country where you could, in my lifetime, where you could actually believe that. Let me put you on hold again. When we come back, I want to ask you something about China.
Sure.
We're talking with Representative Alan Grayson from Florida's 8th. Go to his website, congressmanwithguts.com. We'll be right back.